G'day everyone, this is Tyr and welcome back to another Fallout 76 video. Today we will be discussing the weapon degradation and condition bar mechanic in Fallout 76, because if you aren't aware, it is severely broken in more ways than one and in desperate need of a makeover. Now Fallout 76 by far has one of the most obscure and poorly designed weapon degradation systems out of all the Fallout games I've ever played, maybe even out of all games in general. And in this video I'm going to explain exactly why and how it can be fixed. Firstly, let's take a trip down memory lane to Fallout 3 and New Vegas and take a look at how the weapon condition system used to perform. The information I'm about to read is taken straight from the Fallout wiki. In both Fallout 3 and New Vegas, the condition health bar of your weapons degrade by one numerical value every time you fire a shot. It doesn't matter if that shot hits an enemy, hits a wall, a tree, a rock, or a small child feasting on a rat. All that matters is that upon firing your weapon or hitting an object with your melee weapon, you have degraded your weapon by that base numerical value. In Fallout New Vegas, your weapon degrades at a flat rate of 0.2% weapon HP per shot or attack, and each weapon has its own set amount of weapon health. Meanwhile, in Fallout 3, the degradation of your weapon's HP is consumed and degraded by a percentage of your weapon's base damage and classification. Now both of these systems are fucking amazing and work beautifully. While Fallout New Vegas is a lot better in my opinion, they both work rather well. And in the older, simpler days, this is all it took for your weapon to degrade in condition, which makes perfect fucking sense if you ask me. This also meant it was way easier to determine how fast a certain weapon was going to break or how often you needed to repair it. It's simple and viciously efficient. In fact, things were so efficient for the degradation system in these games that if you look at any weapon on the Fallout wiki from Fallout 3 or New Vegas, you can find a little subsection that clearly outlines for you how many shots that you, the player, can fire from max condition before the weapon breaks, including how many full reloads it would take to break your weapon to achieve complete degradation of your weapon. It even goes as far to factor in the different ammo types, because in New Vegas, different ammo types have the option to degrade your weapon faster or slower depending on what you are using. And let me just say, absolutely all of the weapons were very generous and had the appropriate amount of weapon degradation per pull of the trigger. It was just a truly elegant system. Okay, so that was the old condition system explained. It worked perfectly and predictably. Now let's move on to Fallout 76. And just try to remember everything I said here, because I will be circling back to it when I explain the Fallout 76 condition system and be explaining how messed up it is. But jumping right into things, let's talk about the weapon degradation system in question, that being Fallout 76. Now obviously 76 took its assets and coding etc from Fallout 4, which did in fact not have a weapon degradation system. So I imagine it would have been tricky for the developers to make one up, and it clearly shows that it was tricky. Let me explain. In Fallout 76, your weapon does not degrade per shot. No. That would be far too easy and simple. No, in 76, your weapon degrades per projectile that actually registers and hits an enemy. So as you can see on screen, this means that you can just shoot at the ground or wall literally infinitely and your weapon will never break. Now you're probably thinking, well, what's wrong with that? That sounds great. And sure, I can see how this right here would seem great on paper, but in actual practice, it's a fucking nightmare and very exploitable. And full of bugs. Some of which have not been addressed for nearly 2 whole years since the game's launch. Now let's get into the nitty gritty of what I mean. For example, let's use a regular old shotgun. Now all shotguns in Fallout 76 fire 8 projectiles due to the 8 pellets that it fires from a single shotgun shell. Obviously, because that's how shotguns work. But this also means that unfortunately, all shotguns degrade in weapon condition literally 8 times faster than regular weapons, because of the system Bethesda has chosen. That being that your weapon degrades per projectile that hits an enemy. Whereas in the older games that I previously mentioned, it doesn't matter how many projectiles you are firing from a weapon, your degradation bar consistently only got drained of one numerical value per pull of the trigger. Oh, but it doesn't stop there. This means that all of those legendary weapons with the 2-shot legendary prefix actually degrade in condition twice as fast as normal. If you compare a regular old combat rifle and a legendary 2-shot combat rifle, if they have the same weapon mods and the same condition bar length, let's just say for argument's sake, and if you open fire on an enemy and counted how many shots it took for both weapons to break, then the 2-shot combat rifle would break twice as quickly. Which I can actually back up with some proof. You're watching footage of me testing basically the exact same fixes. They're both explosive, both less VATS cost, they both have the same weapon modifications, except one is bloodied and one is 2-shot. Now the 2-shot one took 11 reloads and 284 bullets until it actually broke, and this was with it being over-repaired with a weapon repair kit. Meanwhile, the bloodied one took 21 reloads and 525 bullets before breaking. As I said, they are the exact same legendary prefixes, except one was bloodied, one was 2-shot, and they had the exact same weapon mods. This supports the fact that 2-shot degrades your weapon twice as fast. Now to make it even more clear, this is due to the 2-shot prefix making the weapon fire a second shot per pull of the trigger. And since our degradation system in 76 functions off of each projectile hitting an enemy, well then obviously that's a core problem for this weapon. Also, a huge shout out to Vampire Lord for letting me shoot him repeatedly in the mouth. Oh, but ladies and gentlemen, I am not done yet. No, I'm only scratching the surface of how fucked up this system is. Let's take any explosive weapon, and by explosive I don't mean the legendary effect of regular weapons that make your bullets explode. I'll get to those in a moment. Right now, I'm talking about naturally, inherently explosive weapons, like the missile launcher, or the Fat Man, or the auto grenade launcher. Now let's take those for a test drive. The best way to show what I'm talking about is by using a missile launcher, because I can lock onto the target with the targeting computer modification, then fire, and then look away at my Pit-Boy to see the amount of degradation that occurs per missile. In short, all of these naturally explosive weapons degrade insanely fast. Just look at how much degradation occurs from a single fucking shot of this missile launcher. Yeah, that's kind of fucking stupid. But the reason this happens is because not only does the initial first hit of the projectile itself, i.e. the missile, degrade the weapon, but it also degrades the weapon further based from the initial explosion and then the larger radius explosion that gets created from the initial projectile. And it doesn't stop there, because explosives can affect multiple enemies with a single shot of the trigger. Then that means you can degrade your weapon proportionally to the amount of enemies that were in the blast radius and affected from that single explosion that you fired. Let's exaggerate a little bit for a huge example. Let's pretend that you were to have 20 enemies in a small cluster, and if you were to fire this missile launcher, or any explosive weapon like a grenade launcher or a Fat Man at them, you would probably break your weapon almost instantly with one shot, because in that single shot, you triggered and registered a single hit from the initial projectile hitting an enemy, and then on top of that, you have technically 2 explosions that will affect 20 enemies, probably twice. First with the initial explosion, and then further with the actual explosion. Which all up would probably equal about 60 numerical values of degradation being applied, all from one pull of the trigger. But that's just an exaggeration of how stupid this thing works with this system. Yeah, obviously it's a flawed system, but I'll explain how it can be fixed at the end of the video. But before I do that, I just want to talk about another example of why this system is so flawed. This is one that I personally have to deal with very often. Basically, since we now know that your weapon degrades based off of the amount of projectiles that actually hit and register on an enemy, and we also know that the explosive bullets from the legendary weapons count as their own projectile, this means that the legendary effect that makes your bullets explode for area damage literally increases your degradation twice as fast. Now, I like to use a lot of explosive legendary weapons, and this means that all of them degrade twice as fast than their non-explosive counterparts. Let's say for example that you have a light machine gun with the explosive secondary legendary prefix, and compare it to a non-explosive light machine gun. Then you'd notice that the explosive one would be degrading roughly twice as fast. And this is because the actual bullet projectile hitting the enemy counts as one hit to the condition system, as we already know. But on top of that, the explosive area damage that the projectile gives off also registers as another hit to the condition system. So basically, if you have a 2-shot explosive weapon of any kind, then your weapon is literally going to degrade 4 times faster than its regular counterpart, which is just so fucked up. And then on top of that, just like with the naturally explosive weapons as I demonstrated before, the more enemies that get damaged or affected by these exploding for area damage effect bullets, they will also degrade their weapons faster based on how many enemies got affected by the blast. It's just fucking incredibly flawed. All of this in of itself just makes this system so questionable. If you don't see the problem with this yet, then you're clearly the type of person that enjoys getting their nuts curb stomped. But just wait, I'm still not done. Let's say that you have an explosive shotgun. Bam, that's 8 pellets and then 8 explosions that will register on an enemy. Meaning your shotgun will degrade roughly 14 times faster than a combat rifle would, because that shoots 1 projectile. It's pretty fucking stupid to say the least. Now Bethesda did actually slightly correct this for shotguns. They gave it more HP, or they did something, I don't know, they did something. But shotguns don't actually degrade as much anymore. They used to degrade so quickly, but I guess they fixed it a little bit. It's still bad, but they fixed it a little bit. But anyways, let's also say that you have a laser rifle. This will degrade normally, it shoots 1 laser beam. Then you put on the beam splitter. Now it's shooting 5 laser beams. This means that it is now degrading 5 times faster than the regular laser rifle would, and that's just from a weapon modification. But let's just say that it's also explosive with the legendary prefix. Then that's degrading 10 times faster than a regular laser rifle would. Yeah, that's why those things break so often if you do have one. I know they are a pain in the ass to keep in top-notch condition because they do break so fast. It's just truly bizarre. So not only is the condition bar as a whole very unpredictable because of the fact that weapon modifications like different stocks or barrels change the length and durability of the weapon, but also it is larger or smaller based on the player that finds the weapon due to intelligence for crafting or luck if you just find it. Meaning there is no concrete answer of how many shots it takes for a weapon to break. But on top of that, it also means that it's just very buggy this way, broken and exploitable. So all multi-pelleted weapons break so much faster than regular weapons. And then on top of that, all types of explosive weapons break even faster as well, making for a very incompetent degradation system. One that instead of fixing, Bethesda has chosen to allow us to pay for the solution in the form of repair kits. Yep, that's unfortunately how this whole thing has gone so far. Unless the people choose to speak up, that's on you guys. So as a general rule of thumb, normally weapons degrade by 1 numeric value if you shoot an enemy. Then they degrade by 2 numeric values if your weapon has the 2-shot legendary prefix, and then degrade even further based on how many projectiles the weapon fires at a base value. They also degrade by 2 further numeric values per projectile if the weapon also has the explosive legendary effect, which can range anywhere from your weapon breaking twice as fast to 14 times faster than normal. And then even further on top of that, whether or not your weapon is explosive by nature or has the legendary explosive prefix, it will degrade faster based off of how many enemies that are affected by each explosive radius. But besides talking about the problem, let's talk about how we can fix it. We have 2 very valid options here. Number 1, keep the current degradation system that we have, but just overhaul all weapons and increase their condition potential based off of if the weapon is explosive or if it's a multi-pelleted weapon, meaning simply keep it the same, but if a weapon has 2-shot and explosive as a legendary effect, then just add 4 times the condition bar potential to that weapon specifically. And for all shotguns, add at least double the condition bar because they are still breaking far too quickly. And then obviously add 10 times the condition bar to all explosive laser rifles, etc. etc. Do this to all weapons that require the overhaul based on the problem that they are facing. This essentially will counterbalance the base incompetence of the weapon's base condition potential while other factors are being involved. So basically, Increase all weapons condition bar proportionally to the problem that is decreasing its condition bar. Now Bethesda could do that and take the easy, lazy way out, but there is a second solution, which is by far the best and honestly my preferred option. Simply, just revert the condition system to the way it was in either New Vegas or Fallout 3. Pick one. Make the weapons degrade per pull of the trigger and not by per projectile that registers on an enemy. Then it wouldn't matter if the weapons were 2-shot, or a shotgun, or explosive, it simply wouldn't matter. Because if the system is reverted back to the old ones, that would mean that no matter what, your weapon would degrade by one numerical value per pull of the trigger, instead of one numerical value multiplied by how many projectiles registered onto an enemy, multiplied by if explosive, and all this other crap. Please just fucking do this, Bethesda. This is a huge change that a lot of players don't even realize is a problem, and they don't even realize that they want this to be fixed. But once you dive deep into the mechanics of the degradation system, you start to see how flawed and backwards it really is. Make the change, Bethesda. Now I hope all of you enjoyed this video. If you learnt something, then be sure to let me know down in the comments, and if you're new here, please do subscribe. As always, a huge shout out to my Patreons and channel members. Thank you so much for all that you do, and as always, links to my social media is down below in the description, but besides from that, I've been Tyr, and I'll catch us in the next one. Welcome to Valhalla.